Hi there, this is Solitude Ronan from Solitude Ronan Films, and welcome to another director battle. Today's battle features two directors that have always been in my top 20, will probably always be in my top 20. This is kind of difficult on an emotional level, but not actually that difficult really, even though both directors have been important. One director probably 20 years ago would be slightly higher than the other one. Both directors born in 1943. Both directors haven't really done much since 2014-2015, even though they both have plans in pre-production. Michael Mann is doing another pilot for a TV show, Tokyo Vice, and he's doing a film about Enzo Ferrari, starring Hugh Jackman as Enzo Ferrari, the famous Italian. See how that goes. And Cronenberg has his own plans with another Viggo Mortensen collaboration. I'm just going to quickly go through their films. You probably all know them anyway. And then I'll just let you know who my vote would be. Not that that counts for much. And then you can let me know in the comments below who your favourite is out of the two. Both influential for different reasons, and both master craftsmen. We'll start with Michael Mann. You don't actually realise how few films Michael Mann's actually made. I think because he's so meticulous in his preparation, the work that he puts into things and details, in research is pretty legendary. We'll start with the Jericho Mile, which is a TV film that he made in 1979. Then he also made The Keep, which he doesn't like to talk about. I wish he would just let it go and let Arrow do a special edition Blu-ray of it. Then Thief, or Violent Streets. This is the first film where he worked with ex-cop Dennis Farina, one of James Caan's finest performances. And Manhunter, which is the definitive Hannibal Lecter film, except no substitutes. Brian Cox is the definitive Hannibal Lecter, except no substitutes. Manhunter is probably my top 10 films of all time. My favourite 10 films of all time. Unfortunately, there isn't a European video cut available in Blu-ray, because for me that's the superior cut. It's one of these films that's got like 2 or 3 different cuts. You can get a theatrical cut, which I would avoid. The director's cut is just about there, but we really need a European video cut, because to me that's the perfect version of Manhunter. Last of the Mohicans, a film I actually saw twice in cinema. Absolutely beautiful, and as Michael Mann put it, unlike the racist book. Then Heat, which is one of the most influential films of the 90s. I mean, Christopher Nolan has pretty much ripped off Michael Mann for his entire career. I know people say, oh, Nolan's ripped off Kubrick, but to me he's ripped off Michael Mann a hell of a lot more than he has ripped off Kubrick. The Insider, Michael Mann's great film that not a lot of people talk about, plus arguably Russell Crowe's best performance. Collateral, yes, it's daft in the end. Yes, Tom Cruise isn't the best casting in the world, but Mark Ruffalo's performance is wonderful, and again it does have a character where when he dies you're actually upset about it, which again is rare in cinema. In Miami Vice, arguably his last great film. When I first saw it, I thought it was very good, and then every time I've seen it since, it's pretty much a masterpiece. Obviously it was slated when it came out. Nazrin Prods recently did a video on it, which you can go check out. I'll leave the link down below. Obviously he did LA Takedown, which I have on disc, which is a dry run for Heat. And he did Ali, which I don't actually have, and I haven't actually seen. It's a Michael Mann film I haven't actually seen. And then he did Public Enemies. Again, it was kind of forgotten about and slated when it came out, but it's still very good. It's not amongst his best, but... And then his last film, Black Hat, which again looks and sounds like a Michael Mann film about computer hacking and global cybercrime, which came out in 2015 and feels it was maybe 5 years too late. But again, it's probably just because he took so long to research it. I mean, Michael Mann is influential not just because Christopher Nolan ripped him off, but his architecture and use of architecture and shots, even the architecture of the frame with objects. Look at his compositions in Manhunter with putting objects in the foreground of the frame. For example, Will Graham's watching videotape of the victims. The television is almost 80% of the frame, and Will Graham's just in the corner, so you know that what's on the screen is dominating Will Graham's thoughts. Just things like that, his architecture within shots, and also his use of architecture of buildings, showing LA like we've never seen it before, and LA's also been shot a hell of a lot, but he still finds interesting places to shoot and interesting locations. So that's Michael Mann. Wonderful, influential. And then we have David Cronenberg. We'll see how his son gets on. So here's some early films on Arrow. Then we have Shivers, or The Parasite Murders, or They Came From Within. Again, there's some more Shivers. Cronenberg was kind of labelled just as one of those horror guys and a genre filmmaker, but again, he was just using genre as metaphors for his ideas. Again, a relationship with technology, a relationship with the world, a relationship with each other. Then we have Rabid, and then more Rabid. He did Fast Company, which again I have on DVD. I really need to pick up the Blue Underground Blu-ray of that. Then we have The Brood, a wonderful performance by Oliver Reed. Then we have Scanners. This is on Criterion. It is notable that I think apart from Thief, Michael Mann's not on Criterion. And the Steelbook of Scanners. And then Videodrome. And arguably my favourite packaged Criterion, Videodrome, which has the discs in a nice videotape box. I think it's Criterion at its best in packaging. Sometimes Criterion's packaging is a little underwhelming. This one's an absolute classic. They really put the work into it. Then we have The Dead Zone, which I think the Australian label is bringing out a Blu-ray of that. The Fly, which is still, if you look up IMDb, that's the film he's most famous for doing. And that's The Fly, which is part of the Scream Factory 5-disc collection, which I would recommend. It's a lot of fun, but obviously Cronenberg's is the best. Then Dead Ringers, arguably my favourite Cronenberg film. Naked Lunch on Criterion. I remember being at university and renting this with a bunch of, let's call them friends. And of course they all hated it and never understood it. Don't get me wrong, it's not my favourite Cronenberg or anything. And I was never allowed to rent a video again. And Crash. This is the Arrow release. Crash on Criterion, and Crash on the German Media Book. He did Spider, which again I've got on DVD, just disc only. Again, that's kind of, along with Butterfly, of course, they're the two Cronenberg films that you can't get on Blu-ray and really need to be re-released, especially Spider, because it's a wonderful film, downbeat as hell, but one of Ray Fiennes' greatest performances, and it doesn't have a Blu-ray release. Existenz, which again, it's Cronenberg back to using genre as metaphor, and taking a pop at the whole test audience thing and the whole creative process. Again, that's one thing that people sometimes miss with Cronenberg, is the fact his films are really funny too. In A History of Violence, Eastern Promises, even though I think Eastern Promises came first, doesn't it? A Dangerous Method, again with the Mortensen. Cosmopolis, the soundtrack with Howard Shore and Metric, one of my favourite bands. Howard Shore has been a regular collaborator. Again, Cronenberg does have a fairly regular crew. And his final one, Maps to the Stars, which is 2014. So both directors, for me at least, really influential. Both directors I love. Obviously Manhunter is an all-time favourite for me. You know, Cronenberg doesn't have a film that's in my top 10, even though I haven't done a top 10 for ages, and I don't think I could, but that's not the point. Cronenberg has a much wider range. Again, he was kind of lumped in with horror directors and genre directors when he started, but he was always kind of talking about stuff that is more than just that genre. And for me, Cronenberg gets the vote in this one. But again, I absolutely adore Michael Mann and his films, especially the ones that nobody really talks about, like The Insider and Miami Vice and Last of the Mohicans, are absolutely wonderful, and his films still have an influence on the way modern Hollywood looks. And also a fun fact, obviously the shootout in Heat was copied and has been influenced, you know, several hundred times in films, but I recently found out that the army and the Marines actually use Val Kilmer's reloading technique. They actually show that as how to reload and back off targets. Who knew? Because again, Michael Mann would have went into detail and made sure everything was accurate as possible. You could argue that's why he hasn't made as many films as other people, just because they spend so much time researching them to make sure every single detail's right. I should add that both these directors are absolutely essential to listen to their commentaries, because they're just so wonderful. Both are ultra smart guys, but they never kind of say that. You know, they're both fairly self-referential and self-depreciating, especially Cronenberg. But their commentaries are absolutely wonderful. You know, Michael Mann goes into every single detail about the research, about the backstory. Cronenberg is just wonderful about the filmmaking process itself. So I would certainly recommend, if you can, listen to commentaries by Michael Mann and David Cronenberg. So for me, Cronenberg edges it, but Michael Mann's always been a favourite and always will be a favourite. But let me know in the comments below who you would vote for, and hopefully you'll join me again for more director battles. This is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films, saying farewell.